Back in August, when our senior class went on our retreat, we were told we'd be doing about a 6 to 8 hour long solo. And honestly, this made me dread it entirely. On the solo, we were basically challenged to spend about 6 or 8 hours alone, journaling and spending time in reflection with God. When it finally came around, my initial plan was just to sleep my way through it to make it easier. But these plans changed when Miss Funk and Mr. Schultz strongly encouraged us not to do so, and I honestly just felt incredibly called out and convicted. To me, being alone means thinking difficult thoughts that often lead to really dark places. I didn't know how to entertain myself without the presence of other people around me. That said, I tried so hard to tap in with God and wait for some epiphany or big realization to come to me, and try and spend my quiet time with purpose. Instead, it didn't take long before I found myself in the exact situation I had imagined. I began to overthink every possible scenario and situation, and eventually it was so overwhelming that I just gave up and fell asleep like my original plan. I spent most of the solo sleeping, and when I was awake, I found myself thinking overall negative, discouraging, and upsetting thoughts. The only good thing I could honestly take away was the beautiful scenery where I sat with the mountains around me and the pretty grass and trees. And as we rode back to the campsite after finally being picked up after some of the worst hours of my life, all I could really think about was how dumb I thought this was. I thought it was wasting my time, and I thought I could have spent it with my friends doing things that actually meant something to me. It wasn't until later, however, that I discovered, because of this negative experience, how much I cherish time with my friends and the passion I have for my friendships and spending time connecting with other people. I've always had and cherished good friendships, and I've always kept a consistent, tight circle of people around me that love me and are there for me. Over here to the side, I have this poster kind of, which represents a lot of different memories and moments, which look like ordinary, just like random objects to probably all of you. But each thing has a certain purpose to it, and like I mean that there's nothing on here that doesn't matter. For example, over here, I have like a ticket which was to the catacombs when I went on our senior trip in London and Paris. But the story behind that is actually just moments after we went through the catacombs, I found myself experiencing major anxiety, and it led to a panic attack where I had my best friends in the whole world, Zabo and Ryan and Ike, talking me through it, telling me how I can get through this hard time, and getting me through that in front of people when I felt really embarrassed and ashamed. And then over here I have a card that's from We're Not Really Strangers, which is kind of like a storytelling game in a way. It says, "How are you really?" And that represents a lot of late nights that I've spent with this friend group from here at Front Range, discussing difficult topics as well as celebrating good times with each other. And then down here, I have a couple of photos like with my brother, which represents a lot of outdoor, like we went on a lot of backpacking, hiking, and like climbing adventures together, and that kind of represents a lot of hard conversations that we had with each other about our childhood and our trauma that we walked through side by side. That we never really talked about until we were older and were like mature enough to kind of talk about it and not be embarrassed. And then there's one more. Oh, down here I have my last example I'm going to kind of point out, and that is this little sign that says my name on it. That's from this past high school season of swimming, because I swim for a different public school. Has notes from all my different friends, and the reason I put this on here is because I cherish their kind words a lot and their appreciation for me as I was going through a really difficult time in my sport and trying to figure out if it's something that I truly love. Because of these overall positive experiences, I continue to be drawn to people out of curiosity of who they are and what shaped them. Whether it's playing games and just having fun and messing around outside, or telling each other our hardships and pain that we've experienced, there's nothing better to me than spending time with these people in the presence of each other with love. There's power in sharing these meaningful memories, time, and stories with each other. And I believe that human connection is one of the most important aspects to living fully through God and His kingdom. God created humans to flourish in community. Ephesians 4:2-3 says, "With all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace." I chose this verse because I feel that is the way our friendship should look. And for Capstone, I've chosen to study human connection and what truly makes our friendships so valuable, as well as tangible ways that we can make them valuable and grow them, whether those are old friendships of years since your childhood or people that you just met and want to get to know. We were made to foster love in one another, to create a sense of safety, community, friendship, and also, most importantly, to glorify God and His kingdom. The first idea that I'd like to cover is the first aspect in which I view this friendship to grow. That simply is in nature without the distraction of our phones or other technology. In the past summer of 2022, I experienced significant adventures such as that had to do with hiking, backpacking, climbing, and biking. Oh, I already said that. Anyways, but mostly with my brother and sometimes with other friends of mine, which in this relatively isolated area, without the distraction, I found it gave the freedom to talk openly and just feel more accepted and less judged without everyone around or the distraction of our phones. These experiences I knew I wanted to correlate somehow in my capstone, and originally I wondered if that's what I wanted my whole capstone to be about, spending time in nature. However, I decided not to, and throughout the year, however, I continued to pursue these adventures with my friendships, whether it was someone that I knew for a while, and sometimes it was someone that I'd only met a few years before. As part of an assignment for Capstone, I did one of 3 research projects on technology and its negative effects on friendship and human connection. Within this, I found from the Pew Research Center that about 70% of friendships and relationships that rely mostly on texting, calling, and other forms of technology as their main communication are overall far more easily frustrated, angered, and way more prone to overthinking than those who do not spend most of their time on their phones. I also found in an academic study by Kip Reddick, a psychologist and researcher, that hikers found their storytelling to be far more easily opened up in nature for examination and reflection in ways that those studied indoors could not. Through these findings, as well as spending time on my own in nature with my friends, I've seen but also personally experienced things that I can attest to that prove how much nature is beneficial to your friendships and sharing your stories. As for all of you, maybe you don't like being outside, you don't like being in the gross grass, you don't like bugs, you don't like hiking, but I'd still encourage you to try something like this, even if it's in a small way. It may sound like I'm sort of like a parent or teacher figure who's telling you to just put away your phones because they're horrible for you, but after hearing it my whole life, I found out they're actually kind of right. I encourage you somehow in your life, even in the smallest ways, whether that's just putting away your phone for 30 minutes or even an hour, just to talk with your friends, or even just going for a walk and sharing stories. To put away your phones, tell each other stories, and notice the connections that will grow. The next aspect in which I want this friendship to grow is through personality typing, through self-reflection and changing your outlook on yourself and others. This includes my experiences and research on the Enneagram and the 5 love languages. In brief, the Enneagram is a form of personality typing that is similar to the Myers-Briggs 17 personalities. If you do choose to take the test, you will be put into one of 9 types that you could fall into. By knowing and accurately understanding your type, the Enneagram has the ability to show you insight into who you are and why you react to certain situations. Therefore, this can translate to the way that you may handle hard situations or react to certain things that people may say or do. Even though this definitely isn't the key to every single issue in your friendships and relationships or in making them better, it definitely is a very insightful and useful tool that even I use in my own friendships. For example, in my own experience, I'm a type 2, which means I'm a helper, and I strive to overall be there for people in a helpful manner. And while this means a lot of good things about my personality, it also can explain why me or a type 2 like me may respond negatively if someone doesn't want my help or receive it kindly. Another example I could use to show you how this works is if my friend's a type 9, this means she does not like confrontation because her core desire is to create harmony and avoid conflict. The Enneagram can be helpful in piecing together a person's negative and positive personality traits in order to shed light into who they are at their core. Similar to the Enneagram and 17 personalities, I also studied the 5 love languages. As for the love languages, one of the other projects I did on my Capstone research projects, I found that through the 5 love languages, there are similar outcomes of the Enneagram in your friendships. And if you didn't already know what the 5 love languages are, they basically focus on and explain the way that you love other people and the way that you like to receive love from them. The 5 love languages themselves, if you didn't already know, are physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of services, quality time, and gift giving. Although it's a pretty It's a relatively easy concept to understand. It really shows a lot of insight in how you can give love and receive it well. It can open the doors to healthier and easier ways of communication to the person that you love, and vice versa. You may wonder, what do I actually do with these in my friendships? Well, by self-reflecting and understanding these things about yourself, you can communicate them and share this. By communicating it, you can know how to love others well by knowing how they've self-reflected and understanding why they want what they want, as well as telling them why you want to receive what you want to receive. In this way, you can't be frustrated with each other if you're not really feeling like you're getting what you want, but also not feeling like you can call them out because they didn't necessarily do anything wrong. In the book that I read for Capstone, Atlas of the Heart, author Barnett says, the process of reflecting, labeling, and communicating emotions is equal to greater psychological well-being in your friendships and relationships. And also, in an interview with former orientation and community leader at Azusa Pacific University, Alpha Joy Lawson, she said, what I've learned in conflict is that usually people all want the same thing. It's just that how they do it is so different. Through this, Alpha Joy illuminates that everyone solves problems differently and sees loving others well differently, but we're all striving for the common goal. I've learned, maybe your best friend may be loved by a simple act of service, and the real thing that they need is you coming over and maybe helping them make dinner or cleaning their room for them. But until this is communicated, you're left in the dark wondering how you're supposed to help them when they're in a dark time. I'm sure we've all felt the sinking feeling when a friend is upset and you have no idea how you're supposed to help them. It's terrible. Well, some of these answers can be found in what may seem dumb and oversimplified, and just simplified into a personality test. However, the simple act of self-reflection, when it is communicated with others, can open a whole new door of possibility in relationships. We all, at some point or another, have also felt so loved and appreciated and seen when someone we know knows exactly what to do in a dark place. And as for how you all apply this into your own lives, it may seem awkward or unneeded to discuss this with people you love, but it can honestly be so game-changing in creating stronger connections. Or maybe you don't know what these are and you'd like to explore them together with your friend. It would be better to explore them together with your friends. And if you'd like resources on this, I'd even love to help. The final lesson where I've noticed friendship to grow is the importance of storytelling in constructing a firm foundation of connections and trust. Brene says, if we can share our story with someone who responds with empathy and understanding, shame cannot survive. Brene focuses much of her work as an author and researcher on this idea of shame and vulnerability. Many of us may feel that in our own testimony we could be ashamed possibly of past addictions or current addictions. Maybe we're ashamed of our ongoing family issues or our mental health. But Brene encourages us to realize that we cannot live when we tell our stories and we're on the receiving end of them with empathy, love, and compassion. When it comes to storytelling, it is important to not just share your own, but be there for others when they want to share it with you. In an interview I had with Profe Taylor on this subject, he said that the most important piece of human connection is having relatability with others and being able to say, me too, I can relate to that. And for myself and my own experience in the past 20 months since I've come to Front Range, I've become a living and active testimony to this statement. After my first couple months at Front Range, at the beginning of my junior year, I found myself, for the first time ever, beginning to open up about my life with people I'd only met just months or even weeks before. In the past, I had always thought and feared that people would either pity me or, quite the opposite, tell me I'm over-exaggerating and that it could be so much worse. However, what I've actually been met with in this past year and a half or so is that when I finally opened up and told my story to others, I got quite the opposite reaction of what I expected. I've been seen, loved, and taken in by those around me, whether they're my friends or people I barely know. I found that through telling my own story that I'm actually helping others, not just randomly sharing something. And I'm also getting these burdens off my own chest and hardships that have weighed me down for so long. A large part of what took place in my realization of the importance and love I have for storytelling is my second semester Capstone experience, where I stood next to my best friend Raya up on stage in the PAC and shared my story in front of our whole high school and middle school, as well as all the staff and teachers. I'd never shared this whole part of my life with anyone but a few close friends I could probably count on one or two hands, but this was in front of my entire school. This was a huge step for me, and it was extremely emotional. I told my experience with my family and the trauma that I've experienced due to my father, as well as my journey through the most difficult times in my life in my mental health. Although I didn't necessarily expect a negative reaction from the people, I also didn't expect the feedback that I did get. I was honestly scared of embarrassment and my peers seeing me in a different light. However, what happened when I walked off that stage was far from the truth. I remember the embrace of friends and their proud hugs and kind words of appreciation that they had for me and their love. I had people that included strangers approach me after expressing their gratitude to me for sharing my story. I had people even come to me in tears, giving me hugs, explaining that they had similar experiences and what they needed to hear in that moment was perfectly timed. The embrace of my community, whether it was a 7th grader that I barely knew or was one of my own teachers, it made me realize the full beauty in sharing your story. Don't let your mind or our culture of perfectionism tell you that your story doesn't matter. Your story is not too messy or not good enough, because that is a lie. Realizing this set me free, and I believe it can for so many of us in our own friendships. You have no idea how much that one friend, classmate, or coworker may need to hear your story. Your friends and community will be waiting for you with open arms, just like mine was. Through sharing your story and listening to others, you can bring a new light to your friendships and connections. Throughout this journey in Capstone, I've learned so much about self-reflection as well as reflection on my own relationships and friendships in my life. Through my work, experience, interviews, and research, and so much more that consisted of it outside of this specific project, I've seen the ways that friendship changes when we go out of our comfort zones. Brene Brown said, "If we have a friend or small group of friends or family that embraces our imperfections, vulnerabilities, and the power we hold, we will be so lucky to be filled with a sense of belonging." So I encourage you to build your friendships and begin new ones, exploring not only the methods that I've shown you today, but working to find your own. Friendship grows where you're willing to be vulnerable. Go out into the world and meet new people and dig deep into these connections because it matters so much. Thank you.